Chuck Hasse with Leisure Outdoor Adventures here. It's the middle of August and we've got a little bit of a algae bloom going on the water, but normally this water is very, very clear. And one of the questions I get asked almost on a daily basis is, how do you approach these fish differently now that the water is improving in clarity year after year? The answer to that is pretty simple. The ways we fished in the past, lindy rigging, jigging, vertical jigging, over the side of the boat, we can't get away with that anymore on Leech Lake. Most of the fish on this body of water year-round are in that 10 to 13, 14 foot range. So if you're running over those fish as you're fishing them, you're already educating them. Once that happens, they become twice as hard to catch. So really what we're doing is we're spending a lot of time with our forward sonar and approaching these fish slowly and trying to stay 30, 40, even 50 feet away from them at times, and then pitching baits to them. If you can get to a fish and put a presentation on them, one day it might be a jig and wrap, the next day it might be a slip bobber and a leech, or a jig and a crawler. If you can get to those fish before they know that you're actually present in the area, you have a much higher chance of actually putting that fish in the boat. We've got zebra mussels right now. We've got, it seems like, a never-ending crayfish molt. Each year the crayfish are becoming more and more populated in this lake. A lot of the fish that we clean are absolutely full of crayfish. They're full of crayfish, they're full of young of the year perch minnows. We just got done with the big mayfly hatch here. So we're having to fight that a little bit too. And what we're finding is, once you find the fish, you almost have to find out what time of day they're biting, or they might go through a little 15-minute bite window. They're so full of forage right now that it might take just sitting on them until they've digested whatever it is they just ate. Once that happens, you'll find small bite windows that open up, and as long as you're on fish when those windows open, you'll be a lot more successful. One other tip that may help you be a little more successful on Leech Lake is the days of finding these massive schools of fish like we had maybe 7, 8, 9 years ago, where they pile up on certain wind-blown points. The reality is those days are almost gone now. We're not finding big, massive concentrations in areas. Usually those areas were areas of perch minnows that the migration of fish would follow. As their diet has changed over the last few years and shifted more towards crayfish, the numbers in the group we're seeing are becoming smaller. So what we are actually trying to do on almost a daily basis as fishing guides is find these areas of crayfish and using our electronics to mark fish in those areas, and hope that they're areas where they haven't been pressured as much as certain community holes or community spots. Years ago, you know, you'd see big flotillas of boats of 20, 30, 40 boats fishing Big Hardwoods Point or Stony Point. You don't see that anymore out here, and my belief is because their diet's slowly changing as the evolution of the zebra mussels and crayfish and all these invasives are starting to take over. So we're spending a lot of times with things like our side imaging, trying to find new areas that fish are holding to it. It doesn't necessarily have to be a wind-blown point now. With the technology we have, we're finding fish that are out of the wind on a daily basis. So just getting away from from the crowds of people or flotillas of boats, it just goes back to the pressured fish not really wanting to cooperate once they're aware that a boat or, you know, someone is present. So we're trying to find those areas that just don't get the pressure. So rather than fishing your traditional fish areas, Stony Point, Cedar Point, Big Hardwoods, we found it to actually be more productive to drop our trolling motor. I mean, I've got my transducer mounted onto my trolling motor and just start driving. You'd be absolutely amazed at where we find fish now. I say it all the time, I can't believe why would there be fish here? Well, the reality is because whatever they're eating, whether it's a molting crayfish or a school of young of the year perch minnows, that's where they are at that time. And if you can find those off the beaten path areas where those fish are located and haven't been pressured, you're gonna be way more successful. One other adaptation I've had to make with the water clarity is it's a little bit of a common misperception that with zebra mussels, you may need to step up your pound test in line or use heavier fluorocarbon or a heavier braid. I've actually looked at it from a different perspective. We're not fishing fish on the bottom as much as we used to. We're finding that a lot of the fish are suspended. So one of the things that we're doing is we're actually downsizing the jig size, downsizing our leech size, downsizing basically the scale of line you're using. I mainly use 6-pound test on everything out here. I'm using 32nd ounce jigs on my bobber setups. Everyone loves a jumbo leech, right? You go to bait shops and they're out of jumbo leeches. Most days, the fish that we are catching are on small to medium sized leeches. Just that downsize and presentation with that really clear water seems to help quite a bit. And each day is a little bit different, but from what I can tell and what I experience on a daily basis is that downsizing your presentation is going to really improve your results.